Hello, it's been a while. Welcome back. My name's Lucas and I'm back at it in my quest to play every game in my over 1,000 game, and still growing, Steam library. I'm rating each game in my extensive backlog on how much I think they're actually worth playing. Today we'll be taking a look at all the Arma, Army Men, and Battlefield games on Steam. And there's a lot to cover, starting with Arma, Cold War Assault. This game was originally released in 2001 as Operation Flashpoint Cold War Crisis, which was quite a mouthful, but it was re-released in 2011 as Arma Cold War Assault. Unfortunately, no matter what you title this game, it's boring and dull. It may have been impressive in 2001 if you were into military simulation, but it just does not hold up in 2025. Its audio mixing is absolutely terrible, and it's very difficult to get the volume levels correct. You can't change the volume of the soldiers' voices, so it makes it very hard to get immersed when you can't hear anything they're saying. The large maps were impressive for 2001, but they're pretty lackluster today. The objectives aren't very exciting either, which may be realistic, but that's far from fun. The modular squad callouts and commands were innovative, but they were very repetitive and annoying, and they didn't really add anything useful to the experience.
5, engage, soldier! 11 o'clock, enemy, soldier, 100. 7, engage, soldier! 6, 8, engage, soldier! 2, engage, soldier! 6.
I'm giving this one a 3.5 out of 10. I wouldn't really bother with this game unless you already have nostalgia for it. Next, we've got Arma Armed Assault Gold. This game was originally released in 2006, and it's definitely a step up from Cold War Assault, but there's still a lot of issues that make it really hard to get into. This game just left me feeling frustrated as hell. Enemies often feel like they know precisely where you are, even when they realistically shouldn't. The only way to get around this is to simply crawl around on the ground through the entire mission like a groundhog with a gun. Don't even think of popping your head up though, because if you do, every enemy within a 40-mile radius will be locked onto you tighter than your own grip on sanity. The instant you set off a remotely, and I emphasize remotely, detonated bomb, no matter where you are, the entire enemy army will immediately turn in your direction, lock eyes with you, and proceed to eliminate you with extreme prejudice. This game truly is a crawling simulator, and to top it off, the gunplay doesn't even feel satisfying. I will say, the audio is a bit better. The game has some epic rock music, but it just doesn't fit the complete lack of anything actually happening. The music says, we're gonna get some hardcore action going in just a second, but the game says, actually I think we're just gonna go sit in the truck. The modular auto callouts are still very annoying and still not particularly useful. They added troop transport and attack helicopters, which is a really fun addition, though they aren't particularly pleasant to fly with a mouse and keyboard. I think it would be much more engaging with a flight stick, but unfortunately I don't have one of those yet. The story is very loose and not particularly immersive. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10. I'd play this over Cold War Assault, but I still don't think it's really worth your time unless you're already nostalgic for it. Arma 2 is next, and it is a massive improvement over the first game. Being made 8 years later, it should be. It's actually very playable, even today, with some great features that aren't usually seen in first-person shooters. Nighttime is very dark, and night vision goggles are essential, and they work very well. When you take them off, your in-game eyes take a realistically long time to adjust to the darkness. This feature was originally implemented in Arma Armed Assault, but it feels even more prominent here. Arma 2 still has a lot of walking around, but it isn't nearly as boring as the previous games. The maps are legitimately huge, and they feel pretty geographically realistic, especially for a game made in 2009. Missions often have optional side objectives, which change the way things play out. Overall, the game felt pretty good, and the modular auto callouts were a lot more useful in this game, though they still felt pretty robotic.
Target that.
Enemy officer, way to our front.
3, engage that man.
I enjoyed this game a lot more than I expected to, and I'll definitely come back to it at some point. I'm giving Arma 2 an 8 out of 10. And following that, we've got Arma 3. This is a great military simulator that feels good to play. The game mechanics are much more refined than previous entries in the series. The tutorials are much better, and overall, everything feels a lot more smooth. The game looks pretty nice for 2013, and there's a lot of complexity in its systems. Arma 3 has tons of content, and I've barely scratched the surface on what this game has to offer. Arma's realism makes it feel very unique from other first-person shooters, and that realism is what makes the gameplay feel fresh to me. You have to be intentional with the way you approach things in this game. It's not like Call of Duty where you can just run in, shoot everybody, get hit a million times, and then walk off just fine. If you decide to rush into anything, or leave yourself the least bit exposed, expect to die, or at least to be calling a medic. There's no regenerating health, and there's no instant health pickups. This game even makes you manage your inventory down to which pockets you're gonna put your grenades in. These games are uniquely realistic, and I enjoy it. I'm giving this one another 8 out of 10. And up next, we have the most recent game in the series, Arma Reforger. Released in 2022, this is another fantastic military simulator with a great tutorial. The helicopter tutorial actually helped me learn how to pilot the helicopter, unlike the nearly useless helicopter tutorials in all the previous games. It felt really rewarding to actually get the hang of it without crashing at all this time. However, I was really disappointed to find out this game doesn't have a main campaign. It instead focuses on PvP and modded content. The multiplayer component is actually really fun though. It emphasizes voice chat and cooperation in a way that would make this game an absolute blast to play with a squad of friends. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to getting a group together to play it sometime. Overall, despite the lack of a main campaign, I'm still giving this one an 8 out of 10. It might have been higher if it had a campaign. Just saying. Next up, we've got Army Men. Released in 1998, this is a fantastic retro top-down shooter. I've gotta say, the idea to turn such a classic set of toys into a game like this is wonderful. There's a good amount of variety in the weapons and gadgets you have at your disposal. You've got flamethrowers, bazookas, mines, minesweepers. Pretty much any Army Man toy unit you can think of is represented in this game. You can even call on paratroopers to command, a bit like a simple real-time strategy game. You can set them to attack a point, defend an area, or simply follow and fight alongside you. This game is old, but very fun and somewhat difficult. The game is well produced and knows exactly what it's going for. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I had a fun time with it. And releasing 1 year later in 1999, we've got Army Men 2. This one's also pretty good, though I think I like the look and style of the first one a bit more. It's more playful than the first game, and it revamps some of the systems. In this second game, instead of having 3 unique equipment slots that can only hold certain weapons and gadgets, you have 6 inventory slots that can hold whatever you want. You also no longer have dedicated slots for airstrikes, recon, and paratroopers. This game focuses more on squad command than the first game, and has a menu showing all of your units. It also allows you to select them in a much more common R.T.S. box drag style. The game feels a lot less serious than the first, and includes some levels in the real world at toy scale, though it technically picks up as a direct sequel to the first game. Army Men 2 trades in the pretense of realism seen in the first game for a more Toy Story feeling style. I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. And next we've got Army Men Toys in Space. This one was also released in 1999, and is practically the same game again, but with some cool new environments and further refined squad mechanics. In a way, this feels like more of an expansion than a sequel. The combat feels like a hybrid between the first 2 games, which is nice, and makes the gameplay just a bit more smooth. This one leans even more heavily into the toy scale feeling, which works. I'm giving Toys in Space another 7 out of 10. And finally, we've got Army Men R.T.S. This one released 3 years later in 2002, and this time around it's a full-blown real-time strategy game. I'm absolutely thrilled they went in this direction, since the previous games had some real-time strategy elements that were fully realized in this iteration. This is a very competent, if simple, RTS that I had a very good time playing. All the squad mechanics have been integrated and improved upon to make something much more cohesive. The game has some decent base building mechanics, and a fun and somewhat varied campaign. The campaign missions are not very long, which can be refreshing for a genre in which the average campaign mission can be around an hour. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. Out of all the Army Men games on Steam, if you were going to play just one, this is the one I would recommend. Now we're moving on to Battlefield Bad Company 2. And oh my 2010 nostalgia. This is an excellent first-person shooter with great destruction simulation. The amount of things you can destroy is phenomenal. If you want to level an entire town, you can. If there's a building in your way, what building? It's gone! I love this. I wish this game still had its multiplayer servers up, because I had so much fun playing this back on the Xbox 360. The campaign feels like a thrilling action movie, and has some really great levels with some interesting mechanics, like the Snowblind mission where you have to run from house to house to keep warm to keep from dying of hypothermia. You can also blow up barrels to start fires that keep you warm temporarily. The campaign has really engaging presentation, and manages to continue feeling fresh and interesting throughout. There's some great spectacles in this game, and the scenery is gorgeous most of the time. This campaign has the most personality out of any of the Battlefield games. It doesn't feel too generic, and it's got a pretty good ending. It's a shame they never made Bad Company 3. I'm giving this another 8 out of 10. Solid game. Next up is Battlefield 3. Released in 2011, this is another great game from the Xbox 360 era. The addition of jets is fantastic, and they're a blast in multiplayer, even though I've always kind of sucked at piloting. I think it would be really fun with a flight stick though. You should invest in one of those. Unfortunately, the environment isn't quite as destructible as in Battlefield Bad Company 2, where pretty much every building in a multiplayer match could be demolished. Now, many buildings are only partially destructible. Despite the downgrade in destructibility, this is still a fantastic game. It's got a well-paced campaign and an excellent multiplayer. Most of the campaign missions are presented as flashbacks, with you being interrogated in the present and telling a story of what happened in the past. As a side note, I really don't like being yelled at, so these guys piss me off.
Let's not forget the nature of a little interaction here. This is not a trial. You are guilty. I know how your fucking story ends.
This guy needs to chill. The way you access the game on PC is somewhat bizarre. When you launch the game through Steam, it opens the EA app, which then opens a web page. From there you can start the campaign or join a multiplayer server. You can also check all of your stats and accolades there, and that part is pretty neat. I'm giving this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's a decent game, but not as entertaining as Bad Company 2. And as for Battlefield 4, well, it's pretty much Battlefield 3, but better in every way. From what I remember, this was the first game that I owned on the PlayStation 4, and I had a great time playing through its campaign. The multiplayer maps were massive in scale, unlike anything we'd seen before in this franchise. The campaign was fantastic and well worth playing a second time after so many years. The graphics are still beautiful and were absolutely stunning for 2013. Multiplayer is still a blast and still seems to have a decent player base. I did have some issues with the mandatory Punkbuster anti-cheat software, likewise with Battlefield 3. So basically if you don't have the latest version of the software installed, then after a few minutes in multiplayer it kicks you out of the game. However, when you install the game, it doesn't install the most recent version of the anti-cheat software. The issue resolved itself for me after I installed Battlefield Hardline, which had a newer version of the software packaged with it. And I'm very glad that's all it took to fix this issue, because Battlefield 4's multiplayer is absolutely fantastic. Dropping from the sky with a rocket launcher and taking shots at enemy tanks and infantry is really an incredible feeling you can get few other places. Each conquest map has a giant scripted disaster that takes place at a certain point in the game, making for a massive spectacle. There's also a really good weather system that makes both single and multiplayer feel a lot more dramatic. Each class has their own class-specific weapons and gadgets, which make the choice feel a lot more impactful. In all of these games' multiplayers, you have the choice to either spawn at a point controlled by your team, or on one of your squad mates so long as they're not in immediate danger. This makes squad composition an interesting component in the multiplayer experience, since each class has their own strengths and weaknesses. This is an all-around good game, and I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. Our next game is certainly one of the most overlooked and underrated games in the series, and that's Battlefield Hardline. Released in 2015, I think everyone at the time just wanted bigger and more impressive Battlefield gameplay with an emphasis on multiplayer. But instead, what they got was a really good single-player cop drama. The developers were going for the feel of an episodic show, and that comes across very well. It has some of the best action scenes out of any of the Battlefield games, and beautiful graphics that still hold up 10 years later. This game is a really unique Battlefield game, in that you're a detective, and most of the time it's a better idea to approach things stealthily, making arrests instead of killing suspects. There are certain enemies with warrants for their arrest, and you receive special rewards for arresting them rather than killing them. Killing enemies also doesn't earn you any experience points, which you need to level up in order to unlock new guns and weapon attachments. That being said, if you play cautiously, you'll make it to max level around halfway through the game. So, aside from enemies with specific warrants, you're a lot more free to let loose with your new arsenal. You can also listen into a lot of NPCs' dialogue if you don't kill them, and sometimes it has really interesting plot-relevant information, and other times it's just comical chats.
I came here once. There was a motorboat pulling 10 girls in a pyramid, and they were like on that side of the lake, and then there was a boat pulling Tiger on the other side of the lake. Well, unfortunately their paths crossed. Tiger's rope crossed over to girl's rope. Next thing you know, the girl loses her hand. All the other girls, they dove in, they're trying to find her hand, and of course the tiger swam into the mix, and that kind of messed stuff up. But yeah, the place closed down pretty soon after that. I never did find that hand. Come on.
When you quit the game, or load back in where you left off, you're shown a "next time on Hardline," or "previously on Hardline," as if it were a TV show. The writing was pretty good, aside from maybe the ending, which felt a little shoehorned in. Regardless of the ending, I do wish it had a sequel. The multiplayer is, for the most part, entirely dead. Although, I did get in a 1v1 conquest match, which felt like playing a game of hide-and-go-seek in an abandoned building with the lights off. Later, I was also able to get in an actual game of conquest, which was pretty fun. Not a bad multiplayer, but Battlefield 4's multiplayer is way more interesting. This multiplayer felt a bit more like Call of Duty. The level of destructibility is greatly diminished from any other game in the series. But I do suppose that makes sense since you are a detective and not a commando. I'm giving this game's campaign a 9 out of 10. It felt like a binge-worthy, over-the-top police drama, and I'm here for it. Up next is 2016's Battlefield 1. And first off, let me go on the record here and say I absolutely hate when companies use this naming convention. Calling their newest release Xbox One, Battlefield 1, Mortal Kombat 1, or what have you, it irks me. Consider me irked. But aside from the name, which should have been Battlefield World War I, this is an awesome game. Instead of having one long single-player campaign, Battlefield World War I has multiple short campaigns, and they're all very well presented. Most of them could have been made into full-length campaigns, and that would have been absolutely awesome, but I still enjoyed the variety. While they are short, these campaigns are really well produced. The multiplayer is an absolute blast, and it's one of the few World War I shooter games that managed to really pull off the setting. The game feels great to play, and has a much faster pace than previous games in the series. The vehicles are a joy to drive.
Whoa, that's Farfignugan. And the Volkswagen Jetta has plenty of it, let me tell you. I'm talking about crisp European handling, brisk acceleration, room for 5 adults, not to mention the huge trunk. Don't take my word for it, although I am a professional. Sample some Farfignugan in a Jetta today. Farfignugan, it's what makes a car a Volkswagen.
Destructible environments are prolific, and there are occasionally massive ships, airships, or war trains that make multiplayer even more exciting. It feels like these massive vehicles are this game's take on the disasters in Battlefield 4, except you actually get to engage with these titans, which makes it all the more exciting. The variety of vehicles also makes it feel a lot more realistic. You can even ride a horse!
No one knows what the horse is gonna do next, least of all the horse!
Out of all the game's multiplayers in the series, I think I had the most fun with this one. However, I will say though that the game's default controller, stick sensitivity, and acceleration are absolutely awful, and with settings as bad as those, it's no wonder why people think mouse and keyboard are so much more accurate than a controller. I got it almost to where I like it, but it still didn't feel nearly as good as a controller does on console. I do strongly prefer to fly planes with a controller, or really any vehicle for that matter. I love the narration in regard to the game's Operations game mode, which is based on actual battles from World War I. The narrator gives an overview of the situation surrounding the conflict before the match. Then when you're loading into the match, you hear a little bit of a soldier's perspective leading up to the battle. Then afterwards, the narrator comes back and tells you how the battle went historically. This game is really fun and graphically beautiful. The vehicles feel great and the moment-to-moment combat can feel intense. 9.5 out of 10. Greatest game about the Great War I've ever played. Following that, we've got Battlefield 5. This one apparently released in 2018, though I didn't even know it existed until recently. And that's an absolute shame, because again, this is an incredible game. Just like in Battlefield World War I, this game is split into several mini-campaigns that take place during World War II. As a World War II shooter, this game absolutely holds up, and has all the great World War II era guns that you would expect, available in a diverse set of customizable configurations. Overall, the campaign missions are actually a bit better than in Battlefield World War I. They generally feature larger game areas, with many different ways to approach your objectives. You can, of course, go in guns blazing in most scenarios, but you can also utilize a stealthier approach. The game includes a distraction mechanic, like in Hardline, and stealth feels pretty good. I enjoyed the multiplayer as much as Battlefield World War I, and I love the way they've dramatized holding on to dear life as you wait for a medic. The game feels great, and when you have a good team, it can be an absolute blast, pushing through to enemy objectives, reviving each other, and overall feeling like a unit. Was I the only one who missed this game coming out? Where was I? This is a fantastic Battlefield game, and I'm giving it another 9.5 out of 10. Last in this series, and unfortunately least, is Battlefield 2042. This one came out in 2021, and is a pretty big disappointment for me. I was super disappointed to learn there was no single-player campaign. The multiplayer is fine, but just the same thing again, really. It just doesn't feel special. I had some fun sniping, and the maps are huge with support for up to 128 players. The weather disasters are back, and that's pretty neat. The wind looks good. Some of the maps look good, but others look worse than Battlefield 4. All of the vehicles that I tried feel worse than any of the vehicles in any of the previous games in the series. I only really had a bit of fun in the more hectic, boots-on-the-ground maps. This game felt kind of soulless to me in a way that's hard to articulate. The game made me feel disappointment, then nothing, with little spurts of fun here and there. This isn't a bad game, but it just doesn't live up to the other games in the series. The multiplayer has some substance, but it really should have had some kind of campaign. There's even a section in the menus of what seems to be the lore that they would have used to craft a campaign in this near future setting. It's like they got the groundwork for a storyline ready to go. Built a bunch of characters, different factions, and stories for all of the maps. And then some higher up was like, you know, actually, we're just doing multiplayer this time around. And so they were like, oh, okay, and threw in all that work as a little Easter egg of what could have been. They have so much written down here. A whole campaign seems to have been planned out and abandoned, and that's pretty sad. The best I can give this game is a 6 out of 10. And as a quick bonus game, we've got Battlestations Midway. This one's pretty fun. Released in 2007, it's a somewhat arcadey World War II shooter, based in the Pacific Theater, beginning with the attack on Pearl Harbor, and featuring both ship and air combat. The aerial dogfights are pretty fun, and you've got infinite machine gun ammo, so you might as well go nuts. You start out piloting simple fighter planes and gunboats, but as the campaign progresses, you get to control larger and more specialized ships and planes. Eventually, you unlock Command Mode, which allows you to spawn and equip units, then switch to play as those units in order to accomplish objectives. The game doesn't do a great job of explaining how to do this though, so I just had to fiddle around with all the buttons until something happened. But when something did happen, it was very fun. I thought it was very novel to both tactically deploy and then play as multiple units in the same battle. Even though the game initially seems a bit simplistic, eventually you see that there's a good bit of nuance to the game. For instance, you have to be facing the proper direction to fire artillery and torpedoes. If your ship isn't oriented in the correct direction, you'll only be able to fire the guns that are facing in the proper direction, which makes sense. You also need to aim ahead of moving enemies in order to hit them, and when you use ordnance like bombs or torpedoes, you need to return to base in order to get more of them. This game is pretty enjoyable, and I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. But now I want to hear about your experiences with these games. What's your favorite in each of the series? Let me know what you think of them in the comments. As always, remember to like and subscribe, and I just want to say it feels great to be making these videos again. I know it's been a long time, but thanks for sticking with me. I've been very busy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you in the next one.